Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where I'm going to discuss my thoughts on the upcoming 4.2.0 patch. But before getting into it, I want to remind you to subscribe for more Dead by Daylight content, and like the video if you enjoy it, because then I'll continue to make videos like this. So first, we'll start with the elephant in the room, the Blight, the new killer, aka the Alchemist. Let's talk about his power, shall we? So his power is basically just dashing across the map, and if he runs into a wall he can then do a lethal dash, and during the lethal dash he can swing to attack a survivor. And that's all. I mean, he has 5 rush charges, so he can technically dash 5 times, but the first time he dashes he can't do any damage at all, and it's just a very underwhelming power. In fact, I must say that he's probably weaker than the Wraith, because at least the Wraith can secure hits when he uncloaks. But this guy, the only way he can hit someone is if they run in a straight line or if they're stuck in a hallway or corridor. His power just doesn't give him anything useful. He gets destroyed by pallet loops, he gets destroyed by window loops. Any dash perks are going to be super OP against him. Sprint Burst, Lithe, even Dead Hard can help survivors just get away from him, because if he attacks the survivor with his lethal dash and then they use Dead Hard, well, then he has to go through the fatigue before he can do anything. What makes this power so underwhelming is that it's basically just a dash. That's all it is, a dash. And he can't even attack on the first dash. It just seems like a very basic bare-bones power for a game that is over 4 years old at this point. And you know, the last killer we got was Pyramid Head, and his power was way more complicated than this, and actually, Pyramid Head has a very unique interactive power that gives the survivors quite a challenge. And keep in mind, this is a killer that people have been waiting for over 2 years, because the Alchemist was mentioned when the Hollow Blight event came out in the lore, and then everyone got excited about him and wanted him in the game as a playable character, and now we finally have him, and he's a disappointment, he's weak. And what kind of makes things worse is that there are several other killers in the game that have dash powers that actually do something. You know, the Demogorgon, his shred, it can break pallets, as well as damage survivors. The pig, her dash, she can actually move backwards while dashing, so she can use it around pallet loops and window loops to try and mind game at least. Leatherface and Billy both basically are dash killers, but their dash can down survivors from the healthy state to the dying state immediately, and Leatherface can down multiple survivors with his dash. And then we also have the Legion, where their dash lets them vault pallets and windows, and they at least apply the deep wound status effect to survivors with it, and injure. Do you guys see something in common with all these dashes? All of them allow the killer to injure survivors on the first time they use the dash. None of them say you have to hit a wall first before you can use your dash to injure someone, which is probably the weirdest part of this ability, for me at least. It's basically telling you to misplay by running into walls and objects. This power is just overwhelming, and I have no idea how they thought this would be a good idea. But I know that a developer said that they have fine-tuned him some, and that the version of him on the public test build is not the same as the one that's live on the developer build. Which begs the question, why did they put him on the public test build in such a terrible state if they have a better version already set up? And are we going to even see this better version? Who knows? Anyways, what can make his power better? Well, if he was able to injure survivors whenever he starts the dash, it would be a lot better. Maybe the devs thought that it would be too OP if he could injure a survivor instantly, but I don't think that should be an issue at all. I mean, there's so many other killers that could, insta-dash on somebody to injure them. take Legion, for instance. He can just Feral Frenzy someone right away. So honestly, it doesn't matter. They should just allow him to injure people the first time he activates his dash. Now the next thing I think would make the dash better is if he could break pallets with it. But when he breaks a pallet with it, he is forced to fatigue, so he can't like additionally bounce. That would help some more with his power and being able to at least deal with pallet loops better. And I feel like they need to fine-tune the controls, because on the public test build it was really hard to control his dash in order to hit somebody with it. You had to be very precise to get any hits or just have the survivor in the perfect place at the perfect time. And while we know that he will probably get some adjustments to his power, we can also tell that his power will not change too much from this base form. Which is another kind of disappointment, because with someone being an alchemist, you would think they would have more at their disposal than just some drugged up rage juice, you know? But anyway, let's move on to the perks. So first up we have Dragon's Grip, which is the one that says after kicking a generator for the next 30 seconds, the first survivor that interacts with it will scream, revealing their location for 4 seconds and becoming afflicted with the exposed status effect for 60 seconds. Dragon's Grip has a cooldown of 120, 100, or 80 seconds. Now this perk has a lot of potential, especially for generator builds, such as ones with Pop Goes the Weasel or Hex Ruin, stuff like that, because it gives survivors a reason to not touch the generator after you kick it. I think this perk will be strong if used correctly by killers, because it gives survivors a tough choice. Do they tap the generator to stop the regression, but take a 60-second exposed status effect? Or do they just find a different generator and let that one regress? That will be up to the survivor. But if you are the killer using this perk, you have to be very cautious as well, because if you waste it, you won't get any use of it. The exposed status effect has and always will be one of the most powerful tools that a killer can use in the game, just because it allows the killer to down survivors in one hit. So I do think Dragon's Grip has a lot of potential to just help killers keep pressure up throughout the game, and it's really going to power up some generator builds. It's definitely going to be a perk that's run pretty often, and it's going to have little counterplay, because the only counterplay will be to do a different generator for survivors, which will extend the game by so much. Now, if the survivor is confident in their running abilities, they can just eat the 60-second exposed, especially if they have things like Sprint Burst or Lithe, or if they are injured and they have Dead Hard, so exposed doesn't matter to them. I mean, survivors definitely can play around the exposed status effect. You can definitely kite a killer for 60 seconds, but Dragon's Grip's used on a killer such as the Nurse, where you can go down in one hit, it would be very deadly. Next we have Hex Undying, which says when Hex Undying is active and a different Hex totem is cleansed, that Hex will be transferred to a dual totem so long as one exists. Survivor auras are revealed for 4, 5, or 6 seconds when within 2 meters of any totem. Tokens accumulated on Hex perks are removed, and the Hex effects persist as long as the related Hex totem is standing. So Hex Undying, it sounds cool. I mean, it's a mechanic that people have wanted in the game for a long time. But the thing is, you are using a perk slot to protect your other Hex perks. So that begs the question, is it worth running it if you only run one Hex perk, or should you run at least 2 other Hex perks with it to make it worth it? Because here's the thing, if the survivors get lucky and cleanse your Hex Undying first, then you will have no protection for your other totems. But if they get unlucky and they cleanse it last, well, your Hex perk is in the game for much longer. But the other question we have to ask is, what Hex perks would you even use Hex Undying with? Well, first one that comes to mind is Hex Ruin. That one would definitely be a hindrance to survivors if they wouldn't be able to kill it right away, especially if you have the Dragon's Grip perk on, which would make survivors not want to do generators even more. Hex Rune plus Dragon's Grip is a strong combo, but what other Hex perks could you run with it? It says all tokens are removed, so Hex Devour Hope is a no-go. Hex Lullaby is another one that would be a no-go as well, lose all tokens. But what about Hex Haunted Ground? If you cleanse Hex Haunted Ground, would it still be activated, but then transfer? That is one to test out, for sure. I mean, Hex Haunted Ground says whenever the Hex Totem is cleansed, then the Hex is deactivated, basically. But would it work that way? One of my friends told me that Hex Undying does work with Hex Haunted Ground, where you can get multiple uses out of it, but I'm pretty sure that is a bug on the public test build, so we won't know 100% for sure until this goes live. If it does work with Hex Haunted Ground though, then that's going to be another devastating combo. To get multiple uses out of Haunted Ground, that's going to be crazy. And I think the aura reading provided by Hex Undying is pretty nice too. You see survivor auras when they are within 2 meters of any totem, so it can give you a lot of knowledge around the map because survivors go across totems all the time and don't even know it. So I think Hex Undying does have potential, but since it is a Hex perk, there is that RNG factor, so run at your own risk. You can definitely do unique things with it, but it's not good for a stable, reliable build. Now for the final perk, Hex Blood Favor. Whenever a survivor is hit, pallets within 16 meters of your location are held in place by the entity for 15 seconds. These pallets cannot be pulled down. Hex Blood Favor has a cooldown of 60, 50, 40 seconds. So 40-second cooldown, pretty fast for a perk like this. The thing is, it is a Hex perk, so it can be disabled, which hurts it a little bit because there's that RNG factor. And any perk that has RNG related to it is not reliable and will never be good as a reliable perk. Doesn't mean you can't do cool things with it. But here's the thing about Hex Blood Favor. It sounds really cool, it's like Bamboozle but for pallets, but it's only 16 meters, and 16 meters is not a big area. And guess what happens when you hit a survivor? They get a speed boost. So, if the survivors know you have Hex Blood Favor, and you hit them, all they have to do is use that speed boost to go at least 16 meters away to a different pallet loop or jungle gym, and they're going to be a-okay. I think if they upped 16 meters to say 24 meters, maybe it would be a bit better, because then it would have more coverage. But as it stands right now, 16 meters is way too small. Survivors can utilize their speed boost to get way more than 16 meters away and just go to a different pal loop or building loop or jungle gym and be completely fine. Another disadvantage of Hex Blood Favor is dash perks such as Sprint Burst, Lithe, and even Dead Hard, because those perks can allow survivors to get more than 16 meters away as well. So I think Hex Blood Favor is going to be easily countered by survivors. All they have to do is basically just go to a different looping area and they'll be perfectly fine. Or they could just cleanse the Hex Totem and they'll also be perfectly fine. So cool concept, but at the moment on the public test build, it's way too weak because it's easy for survivors to transition to other areas. So those are all my thoughts on the killer side of things. Now, let's look at the new survivor, Felix. So his first perk is Visionary. Visionary says you see generator auras within 32 meters. Anytime a generator is completed, Visionary has a cooldown of 20, 18, or 16 seconds. This perk, I honestly have no clue why the devs ever thought this perk would be a good idea. This perk is just a different version of Deja Vu. So, Deja Vu works a bit differently. It only shows you the generator auras at the start of the match, and then every time a generator is completed, it shows you the 3 generators in the closest proximity to each other to you. So Deja Vu is good at helping survivors prevent bottlenecking if that's something they're concerned about. And then Visionary just shows you the aura of generators that are the closest to you, basically, since it's like 32 meters around you. But here's the thing. Generators have giant fog lights attached to them, so you can see them from a mile away. Unless you're in an indoor building, then they don't have the fog lights, but you can pretty much find generators just by walking around. So Visionary is just like they had no idea what to do for the perk, so they just made this one. And honestly, we do not need Visionary because we have Deja Vu. It's just a worse version of Deja Vu. Plus, we also have maps as well, so why do we need a perk when you can have an item? And the cooldown for it seems kinda dumb as well. Whenever a generator is popped, then you can't see generator auras for 20, 18, or 16 seconds. It feels like they wanted to do something negative on the perk, and so this was their best idea. They were like, oh, we can't make it last a limited amount of time because that's what Deja Vu does, so we'll do this instead. Completely useless perk. Next up, we have Desperate Measures. Now this is actually a good one. For each injured, hooked, or dying survivor, increase the speed of your healing and non-hook actions by 10, 12, or 14%. Desperate Measures is gonna be a very strong perk, because that is a huge increase. For each injured, hooked, or dying survivor, you get a 14% bonus. That's huge. Like, imagine how fast you can heal, how fast you can unhook. Imagine Desperate Measures plus Resilience. I think what survivors are going to start doing, if they're smart at least, is that if they're running Desperate Measures, they're going to heal themselves 99% of the way. The second that the killer comes near them or that they're in danger, they'll complete the heal, and they'll most likely get injured soon after that, allowing them to maximize the potential of Desperate Measures. Now, the best part of this perk is the unhook action, because if you can unhook people faster, you can get away from the hook faster. Which means if killers are far away, you can get away much easier. This is going to be a strong perk for Survive with Friends as well as solo survivors, because I know at least when I play solo, everyone's going down, everyone's getting hooked, there's mayhem, there's death, there's everything. Now, the only downside is that it doesn't count dead survivors, so you will lose the bonus if someone is killed. But for the most part, I think Desperate Measures is going to be super strong, because it's just ridiculous. 14% per injured, hooked, or dying survivor, including yourself. Like, wow. We'll see if it gets nerfed. We'll see. Now, our final perk is Built to Last, and I think this one is an interesting concept. Once per trial, a depleted item will refill 30, 40, or 50% of its charges after 10 seconds. So Built to Last will automatically trigger when your item depletes. You do not need to activate it, so be cautious of that. But Built to Last gives you a way to counter some of the killer perks such as Overwhelming Presence, which increases how many charges you use per second while in the killer's terror radius. So that will be a good thing, although not a lot of killers run Overwhelming Presence. But more importantly, it lets you get more use out of your item. Think about using Built to Last with like a purple medkit with a charge speed add-on and healing speed add-on. Like, you can get so much more healing out of that medkit with Built to Last. This would also be really great for maps. You can use it more often to find things, especially the rainbow maps. If you're trying to find hatch or something, you don't have to worry about your usage as much because you know you have that 50% extra that you can get out of this perk. And flashlights will be a lot stronger if you can refill 50% of their charges. Now, of course, you do have to give up a perk slot to do this, but it might be worth it if you want to get that much more use out of your item. Because being able to heal 50% more, being able to blind the killer 50% more, is a really strong thing to have. Which is why it's only one-time use. But I can see a lot of survivors making various builds out of Built to Last, like... Especially Survive with Friends could maybe utilize this perk too, because if your friend's item is about to deplete, you could switch with them, restore their charges, and then give them back the item. So, I think the perks in this chapter sound very interesting. They're mostly unique, except for Visionary, and they're adding a lot to the game. But the killer, as of now, sucks. So, it's going to be an interesting chapter to say the least. Anyways, those are all my thoughts on the newest chapter. And I would love to hear what you guys think about the newest chapter. Let me know in the comments below what you think about all these perks, what you think of the new killer, and maybe some ideas you have for the new perks. Like, what perks do you want to run when they come out? How do you want to combo them? It'd be great to talk with you guys about this stuff. So let me know in the comments below. And remember to subscribe for more Dead by Daylight content and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, good luck out there in the fog, and see you next time.